Well, good morning. Good to see everyone. We just finished Genesis last Sunday. Whoa. We just finished Genesis last Sunday. And now we're going to enter Exodus. The last thing that we read about in Genesis is that Joseph died at 110. And then now we're going to see the transition from the nation of Israel, who are multiplying exceedingly as a nation in Goshen, and the result of what's going to happen to them hundreds of years later. It's pretty amazing. But before we do, Luke, would you mind leading us in prayer? Thank you. Amen. All right, Exodus chapter 1. Now, I guess before we get started, I do love having conversations. That's my favorite classes, when everyone discusses their thoughts. I know I said this when I first moved here, so it's been a while since I've talked about the mindset that I have when I teach, and I kind of transition the style a little bit for the sake of the recording, because what good is if people are actually going to go online and watch the class and then they're like, he's not saying anything, but somebody else is, but I can't understand them. That's weird, right? But in reality, one of the guys that taught me how to teach, you guys may remember this for 2 years ago, he was actually a principal at a high school. And his reputation at that high school was that he was a teacher of teachers. He was considered the master teacher. And the reason why that is because he let the students drive the class. He let the students teach the class. He would present the content, but he wanted to make sure that his students owned it. And the only way that he could know that is if the students told them their convictions and what they strongly discovered from the class. And so that's my favorite way of teaching. I understand not everybody's used to that. I get that, right? Most of us are used to one guy talking and it's like, okay, like I'll consider it, and then I'll talk to you afterwards if I disagree with you. But I'm just throwing it out there. That's where my heart is. That's how we run Mondays and Thursday studies. We love doing that. Anyways, for the sake of the recording, so people are like, what's going on? This is weird. I'm still going to do the helicopter ride over, but I would love to hear you guys' applications, questions, any of that. So, starting in verse 1. So, now these are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. An amazing story that we just finished. Each man and his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I read something wrong. She's like, no. I'm like, Gad and Asher. I thought I read it right. She's like, no. That's all good. All those who were descendants of Jacob were 70 persons, for Joseph was in Egypt already. So remember, they started 70, and they multiplied exceedingly into this great nation. It's absolutely amazing. It's funny. It happens. You know, there was one, I'll never forget, there was a preacher that started preaching for us. He was the second preacher that I learned from. It is so funny. He was deaf in one ear. So that happened. And then he's like, this guy has no filter. So he's like, somebody got something to say or somebody having a good time? And it was the Bible app. And all of us just laughed. It was funny. It was funny. Anyways, it's all good. It happens. Don't be embarrassed. All right. So, yes, verse 6. And Joseph died all his brothers and all that generation. Now, verse 7. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. So yeah, amazing. Through God's providence and provision, through his promises, he made sure that this nation became fruitful and multiplied. And that goes, we could all go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis. That's the first thing that Adam and Eve were told to do, other than tend to the garden. But this is great, because this fulfills, when God multiplies his people, it helps fulfill that promise, his promises. Now verse 8. Got a little problem here. Verse 8. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. Who did not know Joseph? The last Pharaoh, Joseph had his favor. Right? Joseph rose to power and was favored by the last Pharaoh and had lots of influence. But now it's not the case. This guy didn't know Joseph. Now verse 9. And he, this Pharaoh, said to his people, look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. So this is Pharaoh talking. He's like, these guys are more than we. They're stronger than us. So verse 10, he says, come, let us deal shrewdly with them, or wisely, shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, in fear that they multiply, and it happen in the event of war, that they also join our enemies and fight against us, and so go up out of the land. In other words, I know this is New King James, so it's kind of tongue twisty. But in other words, they're going to get so big, their armies are going to be so big that they're going to be a threat to us. They might join the forces with the enemies and take us out. So that's what Pharaoh was thinking. So the result of that is verse 11. Therefore, they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom, and Ramses. So Pithom, city of justice, and then Ramses means child of the sun. And that's very Egyptian talk, Egyptian lingo there. Oh, remember, Pharaoh means great house. So keep that in mind too. The irony of it all, right? All right, verse 12. But, watch this. Look what happens. When God's people are afflicted, what happens? Verse 12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. Look familiar? God's people. See, when you do that to God's people, what's the result? They multiply and they grow. It's absolutely amazing. We'll talk about that afterwards. I'm sure you guys have comments on that. And they were in dread of the children of Israel. The Egyptians were in dread. Verse 13. So the Egyptians made the children of Israel serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar, in brick, and all the manner of service in the field. All their service in which they made them serve was with rigor. Sounds really rough. Sounds like they're in a prison camp, right? I think of, what's his name? Jean Valjean from, what's that? Yeah. Les Miserables. Misery, it means misery in French, right? And that Jean Valjean did this hard labor for years, and all he did was steal a piece of bread, but he became exceedingly strong. So strong that even after years of imprisonment, he stopped being in prison. He was able to lift a cart off a guy that was almost going to die. That's what this kind of labor does to you. It's called the lumberjack effect. So, all right. So verse 15. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. I think that's really cool. Heather and I love midwives. I mean, every single one of our babies, there was a midwife involved. The wisdom of midwives astonishes me. the expertise, the wisdom, and the insight that midwives have. So, all right. Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of the one was Shiphrah. Wait, that's not how you say it. Yeah, it is. Right? Yeah, Shiphrah. Shiphrah, that's how it is. Shiphrah with it, like Shiphrah, and her name means fair. And the name of the other was Puah, which means splendid. So fair and splendid. Really cool. Now verse 16. And he said, when you do the duties of a midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on birth stools, if you research birth stools, Egyptian birth stools, they just basically just sat down and had the baby like that. And that makes sense. There's the whole lying down, by the way, the whole lying down your back. No offense if everybody gave birth that way, but that's a really hard way to do it. There's much easier ways that Heather and I have discovered to give birth, and you guys may already know that. Anyways, so they had birth stools, and then look at, Pharaoh's like, if it is a son, then you shall kill him. Ouch. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. And that makes sense, right? Take out the guys. Take out the people that can multiply, pass on their seed. Take out the threats of soldiers. And it's kind of like a reversal of... Actually, we're going to see a reversal. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see a reversal as we go deeper into Exodus of the firstborn Egyptians getting taken out by God's hand. But let's look at verse 17. But the midwives, ooh, this is cool. I don't know how. I don't know why. Doesn't really matter. But this verse is here. It says, but the midwives feared God. That's so cool. The Egyptian midwives feared the Lord. Feared Elohim. Wow. Oh, we'll get to the comments. We'll get to the comments there. Right. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. Feared Elohim, and do not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the male children alive. So civil disobedience. You know, this is not a lesson on civil disobedience, right? But think about the scriptures that display that. Because we got Romans 13 that says respect governing authorities, fear governing authorities. And then we got examples like this. We got examples like Daniel. He was told not to pray, but he prayed anyways in front of everybody. And then you got the apostles when they said, stop preaching the gospel. And they're like, no. We fear God rather than men. You see? So when it comes to civil disobedience, it's okay if something is being pushed against God and you go against that. But other than that, if there's these other areas, it's like, no, right? We have to respect the law. We have to respect the laws of the land if they don't violate God's commandments, God's will, or God's moral statutes, I'm going to call it that, as David did. All right. So verse, verse 18. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing and saved the male children alive? Verse 19, look at the answer. And the midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women, this is cool, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are lively and give birth before the midwives come to them. What do other translations say? I guess I'll pause right there. Do all your translations say lively? Is there a different word? Because they're lively. Vigorous. That's what I was thinking of. That's right. These guys are strong. Not just necessarily physically, muscularly, but strong-willed, strong-spirited. They're a totally different breed You see? But that's their reasoning. And then look at verse 20. It says, therefore God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mightily. So they try to enslave the Hebrews. The Egyptians try to enslave the Hebrews. They try to control the Hebrews, but they multiply. And then Pharaoh wants to kill all the baby boys. That doesn't work. It backfires, and they continue to multiply. See? God prevails in all of this. Now verse 21. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided households for them. So Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born you shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. All right. Pretty action-packed to me. I mean, pretty action-packed, powerful opening for Exodus. But what are your guys' thoughts on anything in this chapter?
I'm making them work harder and do more. They're literally just increasing their ability and their strength as well as their numbers. We're fighting a losing battle there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting where it says there at the beginning of the chapter where it said there arose a new king who did not know God. That to me is synonymous with there arose a new king in Egypt who did not know God. Because what we saw under the Pharaoh that Joseph served under is that he acknowledged that Joseph, they talk about the Spirit of God being upon Joseph. He talks about how when Joseph interpreted the dreams that was given to him by God. And so there was at least an acknowledgement on some level by that Pharaoh that Joseph had this special, there was something special about him. That thing special was his relationship with God. And so I think what we see is this new Pharaoh not only didn't know Joseph, but he didn't know what God had done for Joseph and his family. So,
Amen. That's right. So, by not knowing Joseph meant that he didn't. Knowing Joseph saw the problem. If you knew Joseph, you saw God's power and providence through him. You saw that had to be the living God working through this man. If you knew his story and his history, right? So absolutely, all of it. His life, his integrity, his faith, absolutely. So Luke first and then Eric. Doesn't take long at all. One generation is all it takes, right? No, good points.
Just a publication, right? You have the Hebrews talk about the difficult time, but it comes out with a positive thing at the end where they become stronger physically, right? But they endure this hard time from Egyptians. Just look at today's time, if we endure trials and temptations as Christians, we can come out spiritually stronger as well with that kind of temptation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that spiritual parallel that we can see. God strengthened them his people physically because of that. And even more so, as Christians, we understand this world is not our home, that we're spiritual beings. Even more so, we have that spiritual insight from the revealed New Testament, and we can apply that to what he promises over and over again spiritually, spiritual multiplication, spiritual growth. Those are the promises of Christ. And unfortunately, suffering, persecution, right? That's the physical aspect of it, is what we see in Acts and the New Testament writings. So, yeah, Heather?
Yeah, just going back to Jeff's comment about that parallel between Joseph and Jesus. In retrospect, if you look back in Genesis 49, where Jacob, was blessing his sons, and he mentions Joseph in verse 22, saying Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. The bitterness archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd of Israel. So we should see, again, that parallel between, Joseph's described as the vine. Jesus himself said, I am the vine,
Mhm.
branches. And, despite all of the trials and the suffering and hostility, the children of Israel remained strong. And I think that's such a inspiring example for us today as children of God to overcome obstacles, knowing that we have the power of God within us.
Yeah. Very good. When we were in that genealogy, I found 41 similarities between Joseph and Jesus, but I didn't get into it. But just think about the flying over the similarities between Joseph and Jesus, and you just think about real quick, let it flash before your eyes, and so cool. And yes, Joseph was just a man, but it's still a parallel, and the prophecy itself points to the mighty God, the shepherd, the stone, right? So it's really cool. But yeah, thanks. So yeah, any other thoughts or applications on Exodus chapter 1? Yes?
One more thing that I noticed, that it foreshadowed the mass genocide
Mm.
Herod decreed during the time of Jesus' birth.
Yep.
How many of the boys who under were killed in an attempt to kill the
Mm-hmm.
So
And
we need to see that parallel here.
it's a reversal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought about that too when you were reading through the Gospels, and it talks about how the prophecy was, well, they're going to have a flight to Egypt. That's funny, right? Because these boys are getting executed because he's trying to find Jesus, but they go back to Egypt. So it's a total reversal. Very interesting. Anyone else? Exodus chapter 1, anything that pops out to you?
I think it's worth noting that it says God was good to the midwives who feared him. Small thing. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah, amen. It's not a small thing. It's not a small thing. It's a big thing. He provided, right? And remember, we always have the discussion, what does that mean? The ultimate version of his provision is the spiritual provisions he gives us. That's what matters in the end, and in the grand scheme of eternity. Yes? So I don't know about the Hebrew definition, but that's how we as Christians try to explain people that are be afraid of God, he's going to kill me. It's no, there's a healthy fear, which is based off faith. And 1 John chapter 4 clarifies that kind of faith and that kind of love that perfect love that we have for Christ, that casts out fear of punishment. So then we have to reconcile all the scriptures together and say, what does that mean? Right? And yes, a healthy reverence, a healthy respect. And I like to use the illustration that if any of you use power tools, which most of you probably do or have, you have to respect the machine, knowing how dangerous it could be. If you're reckless with it, it'll kill you. It's as simple as that. But respect the power that it has. There's another completely different side of the coin which we need to consider when it comes to fearing the fear of the Lord. Let's call it that, because it's defined as the fear of the Lord. So what I like to think of is, should we not fear life without God? Yeah. That should more than this world, more than the worries and the cares of this world, more than any threat of this world, we should fear life without God. Not having Him in our life. So that's another aspect of it. So. All right, any other thoughts? I'm ready to jump into chapter 2, but if there's other brethren that have much to add, because this is a deep chapter, I know. All right, we're good. Let's go to chapter 2. See, if we do 2 chapters every Sunday, then okay, yeah, we can make some progress. All right, chapter 2. Moses enters the picture. So watch this, verse 1, chapter 2, verse 1. And a man of the house of Levi. It's like, ooh, Levi. Why Levi? Didn't we just read about Levi in the last genealogy? And it's like, oh man, these guys are like murderers, right? That they're not going to prevail. No, God has a place still. Very interesting. So a man of the house of Levi went and took his as wife a daughter of Levi. So the woman conceived and bore a son. All right. 100% Levite. And when she saw that he was a beautiful child, that's so cool that it says that, she hid him 3 months. And that's a long time. Verse 3, but when she could no longer hide him, and we don't know exactly why, but she couldn't, so she took an ark of bulrushes for him, daubed it with asphalt and pitch, put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the riverbank. I just love how it's a mini ark, right, that we read about in Genesis. A miniature ark. And it has pitch, just like the giant Noah's ark. So cool. Now verse 4. And the babies, we know who it is, but I'll just keep reading it anyways. And his sister stood afar off to know what would be done to him. She's like, okay, what's going on, right? And then verse 5. Then, this is awesome, the daughter of Pharaoh, basically a princess, came down to bathe at the river. Is this a coincidence, right? No, it's not a coincidence. It's the opposite, right? And her maidens walked along the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to get it. And when she opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the baby wept. So she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. Now verse 7. Then his sister, the baby's sister, it'll be revealed who she is later, said to Pharaoh's daughter, now this is very interesting. See? So the sister that stood afar off and says, okay, what's going to happen to my baby brother? She enters the picture and she's talking to Pharaoh's daughter. She says this, shall I go and call a nurse for you from the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? So this is Moses' sister talking to Pharaoh's daughter, and then watch what happens next. This is crazy, right? Remember, not a coincidence, but the opposite. Verse 8. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, his sister, go. So the maiden went and called the child's mother. So Moses' mother. And then what happens? Verse 9. Then Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child away and nurse him for me. You see what's going on here? The mother got the baby back, in a sense. She gets to nurse the baby Moses. I already gave the name away. We know who it is. This is so cool. That's right. That's right. She says, nurse him for me and I will give you wages. So she's getting paid to nurse her own baby. All right. So the woman took the child and nursed him. Now verse 10. It flash forwards pretty fast. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. Pharaoh's daughter adopted him. So he basically became Egyptian royalty at that point. Kind of, sort of. So she called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. And Moses means drawn out, or to draw out. Awesome. I'm going to pause right there and see if you guys have any thoughts on this. She just came in, guys. That's why she asked that question. I did bring up Noah. No, yes, absolutely. It's like the miniature model, like the Revell. Is that the plastic model makers Revell version of the ark? She's like, okay. But it's like, yeah, where did she get that design from, right? Where did it come from? So it's so cool. But yes, any other thoughts?
We talk about the faith of Moses and how you wonder, because I think sometimes we look through the lens of our own culture,
Mm-hmm.
and you wonder, well, if she only nursed him and then sent him to Pharaoh, how did he develop this faith in God? But from what I understand, in Hebrew culture, they nursed their children up till they were anywhere from 3 to 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so Moses would not have gone to live with Pharaoh's daughter until he was either a toddler or a pre-elementary school child, basically. And so his mother had a lot of time, and his father as well, to teach him about God and all of that. We think, well, you wean them at 12 months, and
Yeah.
but that's not the way it was. And so, she got a lot of time with him, and that's just, she taught him. She wasn't just nursing him; she was teaching him.
Yeah, that's right.
That's just, I always thought that's kind of neat.
No, really, really good points. Yes.
And there's always the providence of God.
Yes.
Did God affect his mind later when he was older and understood more? Maybe he remembered something that his mother taught him.
Mm-hmm.
And just him being alive was how much was God and how much was just the natural way nature works.
Yeah. And as we go on in this chapter, we're going to see that he knew who he was. He knew where he came from. He knew he was a Hebrew because he considered the other Hebrews brethren. So that's another aspect too. What did those Hebrews talk about? What did those Hebrews acknowledge in their life, even though they were enslaved? surely they must have brought up God too. This is all legit. Everything. The mother raising him, the influence from God, and then the people around him. There's another thing too that it's really fascinating to me that was causing Heather to cry last night. Besides me, right? Just being in her life, just no. She found this video where this woman was singing to her baby. She was singing. It's a faith-based song about God and God's perspective. How much God loves the baby. So she picks up the baby. She's filming it with her phone, and the baby's not crying. But then once she starts singing to this baby these lyrics about how much God loves that baby, the baby starts crying. Not but tears and sniffling. So that, to me, that was absolutely amazing. So, I don't know. Just something to think about. Yeah. Yes.
And I think just the very fact that he was nursed by a Hebrew, that Miriam asked Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go find a Hebrew? And I think that all goes back to the way the Egyptians viewed of course, Pharaoh's daughter was not a mother herself, so she couldn't nurse him.
Right.
But why not go find an Egyptian to do it? Well, because the Egyptians considered the Hebrews to be an abomination.
Yep.
Because they were keepers of sheep, and so, it just all works together amazingly.
Yeah, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, and so, it's just a pretty amazing story.
Yeah. And it's barely unfolding right now, right? So, go ahead.
I don't know if you would talk about it, but just what strikes me the most is Moses' mother really trusting in God's protection over her son as she is putting him in this basket in the Nile. When I was researching the Nile, I found
Yeah.
there's so many dangerous, poisonous creatures in the Nile alone.
Yeah.
It's like it causes you to shudder.
Mm-hmm.
Like the top 10 most poisonous creatures that are living and swimming around in the Nile. And you think about that, like she knew. Obviously, this river was flowing through her country. She was aware of the dangers, but she trusted in God's protection provision over her son, even as she let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think about that in relationship to us as mothers. In this world, we raise them to know the Lord, and we have to let them go at some point. That's part of God's plan, but we have to trust that, this world is full of poison and wickedness and all kinds of dangers.
Mm-hmm.
But God is going to work through that situation to provide for our children. We have to trust that He is going to provide, even in the midst of all of those things. And sometimes that's really hard to think about. It's like, really, but she trusted so much, and the outcome was so beautiful. And I don't know, think that gives us hope as mothers.
But not as a father. No, I don't care. Do it if you want the baby. No, definitely. No, absolutely.
As a mother, did her husband agree with her decision?
It doesn't say. It doesn't say.
No, it doesn't say. It doesn't say. But it says that she did this.
She did what she had to do.
Yes.
He was going to get executed if this did not happen.
Yeah. She understood.
But she still trusted. Yeah, absolutely. But good parallels. Good application as far as the world and the dangers of it. you just mentioned the poisonous things. There's way more threats than just the poisonous things. There's things that are just big and will kill anything anyways, right? So that's, yeah, of course it took a great amount of faith for her to do that. But if you have any babies, don't put them in the Nile River. That's not, don't be like, oh, good idea, right? I want to. Yes.
I'm also just amazed at how she hid the baby for 3 months. That was extremely difficult for her. They cried, and I don't know if she was still working at the time because the Hebrews were slaves.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to keep up that stamina, that perseverance, and all that stuff was really difficult for her. But once you know, you can see how God just helped her out with all this stuff. And led her to the nurses home afterwards.
Well, even to back this up further, from what Eric just said, did Jochebed know she was pregnant with a male child? And knew she had, because usually by the 4th month, a woman is shown.
Mm-hmm.
So did she know and stay basically still housebound to hide that? And if she did not know she was going to have a male child, how did she explain afterwards when all of a sudden her stomach is flat?
Yeah.
I wonder how that played out.
Yeah. It's not revealed, but it is interesting to think about for sure. For all the women, like, what are you going to do? Then, oh, if she's pregnant, keep an eye on her, right? Watch her for sure until that baby comes out. Yeah, good thoughts. Was the second bell didn't ring yet, right? Okay. All right. So there's probably time for one more thought or application. Anything else? Yes.
It was amazing that Pharaoh's daughter didn't have pity on the child, even though her father was trying to put the child to death.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I'm pretty sure God played a huge part in that.
Yeah. And I love that when that happens. That's a classic story. There's like this evil villain king, and then the princess or the prince is like, no, I disagree, Dad, right? You can't do that. My dad is evil. So, all right, thank you all for your time and attention and your contribution. Thank you.